Good morning, gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to be invited to the Paris Peace Forum. I truly believe that it is an excellent and necessary initiative to bring together multiple stakeholders and reflect on major global issues. As French Secretary of State for Social and Responsible Economy, I'm truly convinced that social economy is one of the key topics that require international cooperation for two main reasons. The first reason seems obvious. If we want to change our current capitalist system towards more sustainable and fair economic models, we must act globally. Local initiatives are, of course, necessary, but they must be promoted at the international level to be able to change the whole system. The second reason is that without international standards on social economy, it's going to be almost impossible for companies in this sector to grow internationally and to cope with competition. This is why France is pushing for more harmonization and cooperation, both at the European but also at the international level. Indeed, at the European level, France is already acting to find new standards between countries and expect to move forward thanks to the upcoming French presidency of the Council. We have here a unique opportunity to develop awareness and concrete solutions to foster social economy. Along with 8 member states, we came up with an ambitious position paper that we shared with European Commissioner for Social Affairs, Nicolas Schmit, where we were focused on 3 main objectives: improving the legal framework, improving impact measurement, developing new funding solutions for social economy actors. After the publication of the action plan by Commissioner Schmit next December, we will actively work with the other member states to find in Europe common positions and to strengthen this sector, notably at the occasion of a summit on social economy in Strasbourg, the 17th and the 18th February 2022. This will be a great opportunity to discuss about concrete solutions to implement this action plan in all Europe. At the international level, France is also leading the Pact for Impact Alliance that was launched during the G7 French presidency, as you know. This alliance is naturally working together with other international institutions such as the United Nations and the International Labour Organization, and contributes directly to the achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals on the 2030 agenda. Our ambitious target is to reach 10% of the global economy dedicated to a fairer and more sustainable society. Reaching this objective and moving towards a greener, a fairer, and a more sustainable economy will not be an easy journey. I know that you know this. But I am truly confident that we can make a lot of progress, working all together. So many thanks to the Paris Peace Forum for organizing this panel and for giving me the opportunity to take part in it. I wish you a very good conference. All the best.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this session of the Paris Peace Forum called Pact for Impact, Mobilizing Forces for the Social and Solidarity Economy. My name is Frédéric BAILLY. I am an executive board member at Group SOS, Europe's first company devoted to social and societal change. I'll be moderating this session from Casablanca in Morocco. Thanks for being with us today. If anything, COVID has stressed how fragile our economies are while the latest IPCC report has shown that the world is on track for a rise of 2.7 degree by the end of the century. Therefore, we all face the imperative task of achieving the SDGs if we are to ensure that our children and their children after them live in a better world. Today, with our four speakers, whom I will introduce momentarily, we will discuss how global alliances like Pact for Impact foster the conditions for a fairer and more sustainable society, and how cooperation at a global scale between public and private sectors, as well as the civil society, is essential to reform the way we do business. We will ask ourselves what it takes for companies to balance their economic performance with their social and environmental impact. We will talk about local initiatives, how they strive in a very competitive global market, and what is holding back from getting a bigger piece of the pie. Three of our speakers today are on the front line as social entrepreneurs and innovators. Yet they all understand the need for coalitions at local, regional, and international levels. Before we hear about their experiences and insights, I would like to turn to you, Sir Ronald Cohen. You are chairman of the Global Steering Group for Impact Investments, chairman and co-founder of the Portland Trust, and co-founder of several significant investment firms with a strong drive towards impact. You recently wrote an article in Time magazine in which you called for impact, the invisible heart of the market to guide the invisible hand towards a more sustainable future. In order to set the stage for this conversation, please tell us, Ronnie, what will it take for the heart to win over the hand and guide us?
Thank you very much, Frédéric. It's wonderful to be here at the Paris Peace Forum with our distinguished panelists. Under the pressure of consumers, of talent, of investors, and of innovation in technology and in finance, Frédéric, we're seeing our economic system change. We're seeing it shift from seeking profit alone to seeking both profit and impact. You can see that in the $40 trillion, Frédéric, of ESG money. Within that, you can see it in $3 trillion of bonds that companies have issued that are green, social, or sustainable bonds. And within that, you can see $200 billion of bonds where the invisible heart of markets really guides their invisible hand, because the rate of interest the company pays on the bond is dependent on whether or not it achieves social and environmental targets. So the change has already started. Now, the big breakthrough is coming because we're beginning to measure impact. There was a very significant announcement just a week ago by the organization which sets all financial accounting rules outside of the United States. It's known as the IFRS, that it will establish an international standards sustainable board, International Sustainable Standards Board, forgive me, which is going to agree the metrics that we use, the tons of carbon, the liters of water, and so on, the diversity measures, for companies to gauge their impact, for investors to be able to assess it, and to be able to compare between the performance of companies. The next big step, as Olivier Gregoire was saying, is the evolution of measurement. If we want to compare our impacts, social ones, environmental ones, within social, if we want to compare diversity with differences in pay or advancement of gender groups, within environmental, if we want to compare the use of water with carbon emissions and so on, and if we want to compare all impacts with profit, then we need a single unit of measurement, which is money. We need to put value on impacts And when we do that, we will enable all of us to understand very simply how a company delivers both profit and impact, make comparisons between companies, and the money will go to those who manage to balance risk, return, and impact best. Effectively, the organizations that are going to be speaking in this panel with you and with me need access to capital to the extent that their impacts are measured and visible. Investors who seek to support the creation of impact will go to them. But there's another big advantage that will result from the measurement of impact. The new values mean that talent wants to work for companies that don't do harm and that create good. Consumers don't want to buy the products of companies that are harming our planet or lives. And so investors will naturally go to the companies that can attract talent and consumers most easily. So we are in the process today of what I call in my book an impact revolution. And we have to put all of our efforts, as Olivier Gregoire was saying today, to advance the measurement of impact so that we can direct capital flows to meet our greatest social and environmental challenges.
Thank you very much, Ronnie, for these opening comments. Let me now maybe turn to you, Jeroo. Jeroo BILLIMORIA, you are founder of the One Family Foundation and a strong advocate of catalyzing change through collaboration. And although I am sure you will downplay your role, you are indeed you're a founding member and the driving force behind Catalyst 2030, a global movement of social entrepreneurs and social innovators from all sectors who share the common goal of creating innovative, people-centric approaches to attain the SDGs by 2030. And as Olivier Gregoire rightly put it, we do need coalitions. So please, can you tell us what Catalyst really is doing and how you think it can help in building this sector globally?
Sure. Thanks, Frédéric. Well, you have been part of co-creating Catalyst as a founder member. And basically, Catalyst is a network of leading social entrepreneurs from across the world. And what we realized is that individually in silos, we are creating impact. Our network members have helped the lives of over 2 billion people. However, that's individually. If we came together, we could actually catalyze this towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. If we collaborated, did joint strategies in addition to our work. So Catalyst members have come together to see how we are able to make sure that together as a coalition, we can actually help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, which, as you know, are currently slated to be achieved by 2082. So I think that's the first thing that Catalyst is doing. We are creating a whole network of impact actors across the world. We have 1,000 actors. We initially started with just 100 co-founders, of which Frédéric was one. So Ronald Cohen, you spoke at our first event of catalyzing, accelerating the sector. Since then, we've gotten many more impact players in. And essentially what we are doing is coming together and forming strong local sector bodies which can work together with governments to accelerate the change. So innovations can happen and this can take it forward. So this is what we are doing. And I love France's ambition of having Pact for Impact, which is wanting to look at having a strong social economy. We have the social actors, social impact actors. If we work together, we can make the change we wish to see happen by 2030. So that's what I would say, and that's what Catalyst is about, Frédéric. Over to you.
Thank you, Jeroo. Another question for you, Jeroo, before we speak with Roberto. Ronnie just mentioned that companies are changing. They are inventing new ways of doing business, and also they're getting a lot of pressure from consumers. How do you think, again, an organization or an alliance like Catalyst actually impacts positively those companies, those corporates?
So one of the things which Catalyst did is work with the corporates to create how can social procurement, which is actually a $1 trillion industry, work with social entrepreneurs. So along the value chain, making sure the standards are fair, social entrepreneurs can work with the corporates to make that happen. And of course, we are also looking at them and how can they make their ESG more sustainable. So what we have started doing is actually mapping the whole corporate journey from the beginning to it reaching the client, and what role can we as social entrepreneurs play along that journey, and then collaborating to see the change we wish to see happen. And we have already had some very positive corporates who are starting to work with us and look at making this happen. So maybe with you, we can see how to make more of this happen, so.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeroo. Thank you, Jeroo. Now turning to Roberto Barbieri. Roberto, you are the Managing Director of Oxfam Italy. You teach at Florence University and you are an expert in international cooperation and development. MEDUP, the social entrepreneurship in the Mediterranean project, which was started by Oxfam, aims to promote an enabling environment in the southern Mediterranean partner countries for the development of the social entrepreneurship sector as a driver for inclusive growth and job creation. Roberto, can you please tell us more about this initiative and the main lessons of this program as we are now speaking again about creating alliances?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Frédéric. And we come from an experience of international development cooperation, and so how to foster social economy from this perspective. But we are very much in line with the panelists that intervened before, and particularly Jeroo and the need about cooperation. So this is a kind of issue that has been brought in this discussion. Also from our side, this is really key. And from our perspective, working in 6 countries of the South Mediterranean area, I think that there are 2 issues that, in my mind, are relevant according to our experience. One is addressing, through the program, the whole social entrepreneurship ecosystem, let's say, in one strategic approach. And this means having actions addressing, at the same time, the single social enterprises, the business support services, and the policy and the national program level. Then, as another issue is the partnership and the well-integrated partnership in each of the six countries and in Europe. That is acting, this partnership, in a kind of coordinated plan of action to address these 3 different levels. So we have the EU actors with including social innovation actors, financial institutions, thematic network. In the Southern Mediterranean partners, we have different business service provider and civil society partners. And then, of course, we have the institution in each country, relevant ministries, regional, local institutions. So the added value is really integration of these competencies in a coordinated way. In terms of lessons learned, just to give a floor, our perspective, first of all, I would say social entrepreneurship, from our point of view, are in many cases the solution to long-lasting, unresolved social and environmental problems in vulnerable poor countries context. So problems that don't find any effective actions by institutional or public sector and the traditional private sector. So it's the community coming together, trying to solve these problems, providing dignified work. In many cases, being the alternative to the informal economy. So We have in different areas examples like waste management, inclusion of people with disabilities, new agricultural techniques, climate change warning system, just few examples. Second lesson is that if we want to address, and it's fundamental what the Secretary of State mentioned in terms of the legal framework, if we want to be effective at the policy level, we need to bridge the gap between theory and practice and bringing at the table the social enterprises and having their voices to influence the policy level from their own day-to-day perspective. Then as an additional issue, more than to concentrate on the legal framework, which is and will continue to be different in various countries. So we have associations, we have cooperatives, private companies, NGOs. Is much more important from our perspective to focus on the promoted business model. So what type of business are we dealing with? How the business contribute to solve specific, well-identified social problems through a sustainable entrepreneurial approach. And then one last thing, from our point of view, fundamental that the business support institutions are developed addressing this new growing and everyday more important sector that is social entrepreneurship and social innovation. And this will take time because in some cases we see that there is still a cultural gap, not only in the public opinion, but also in our sector that needs to be filled. But really, there is no alternative between social and economic, or social, environmental, and economic. And but there is still a lot of work to do.
Absolutely. Thank you for these first comments, Roberto. We will get back to the topic of the legal framework later on in this conversation. And before I ask a question to Elise Pierrette Memong-Meno, I would like to remind our audience that there will be a series of questions. You can ask your questions in the chat. I see the first questions coming in. So please feel free to send us your questions. Now, Elise Pierrette Memong-Meno, you are the coordinator of the National Network for the Social and Solidarity Economy in Cameroon. You're also the General Secretary of the African Network for Social and Solidarity Economy and a member of the RIPES. You are, as I said earlier, at the front line. We've been talking about global alliances with Jeroo. We've been talking about more regional endeavors and alliances with Roberto. I would now like to talk with you about what happens at the local level. And as Olivier Grégoire rightly put it, it is important that we act at all levels. The COVID crisis has led to a number of initiatives, both public and private, to support the economy. I would like to ask you, what are the main consequences of the pandemic on the social enterprises on the field in Africa? How have they faced COVID and how have they reacted? Please.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I know it was rather difficult to set up this connection. As you said earlier, it's important to listen to people who are working in the field. This is something we must always keep in mind. Indeed, the COVID pandemic, in order to understand the impact of this pandemic on the social and solidarity economy, we have to look at these businesses that work in services to people at the grassroots, that are people that are producing things on a local level. These are companies that don't necessarily have a lot of financial backing. And for those that produce goods, they are often produced for local consummation, as well as goods that are sent to neighboring countries. So When COVID came along with all of the restrictions, including closing down of borders, this had an impact on these local businesses because their activities were blocked. And many of these small businesses went out of business, or they had to reinvent themselves. These businesses, if they were to succeed and remain active, had to use the so-called tontine system of pooling funds. And they were able to recreate this using modern technology and telephones. So they were able to continue to provide services. For example, people who cook food, instead of serving in restaurants, they were able to do household deliveries. There was a lot of creativity as well, because some businesses, for example, were able to produce hand gel, for example. There was a lot of resilience, and we could see that the social and solidarity economy is an important sector in Africa, because up until now, the informal economy has been quite significant. About 80% of most national economies is situated in the informal sector. This is true for many African countries. So what do we do in the field? We think that the municipality in many countries, such as Cameroon, where we have the municipality and then we have the region, but we like to work on the most local level with local politicians to see how we can strengthen or reinforce the resilience of these companies working on local markets, so that local consumption can be more important, or a more important share. At the same time, we try to see that local institutions and policies create institutional markets as well. That is, they need to be involved in the consumption of locally produced goods. Because up until now, a lot of the locally consumed products are actually imported. Look at the rice that comes from China, for example, whereas there are people growing rice in China. Corn is brought in from abroad, whereas we do have people growing corn in Cameroon in cooperative farms. So we have to have a fundamental review of this system and see how we can look at an improved value chain where we can assist actors in the social economy from production to consumption. And we need to start far upstream. That is, we have to look at the market itself. And for this, local producers need to be accompanied by local authorities and regional authorities. This is the dynamic that we would like to see, because these local authorities need to listen to local economic actors to see what their needs are, to see what obstacles they face in regard to setting up a social economy. So this is how we're approaching the question, and we'd like to do this in all of the member states that are part of our advocacy group, to bring our arguments to local authorities in different regions and countries. I think that's what I'd like to say for now. And as we discuss with you, I think the Pact for Impact and other actors could be helpful to us as we try to set up this dynamic throughout Africa.
Very much for these comments, Elise Pierrette. Turning back again to you, Ronnie, I would like to touch upon the issue of financing this change? We know that there has probably never been as much money available as today on the market, yet it is not necessarily directed to supporting those local initiatives like the one that was just mentioned here. So what can you tell us about the changes that you're seeing in the financial market and how it is addressing the SDGs at those different levels?
So you're asking the key question today after COP26, Frédéric, because we had $130 trillion that signed up to the idea of using finance to improve our world. But we have disagreement about whether or not every country should participate in this, with emerging countries feeling that they're being unfairly discriminated against. And we have no mechanisms for incentivizing these flows of capital. And so it seems to me that we have to build now on the flows that are beginning to be guided by impact and strengthen these flows. So, for example, $200 billion, that's a lot of money, is going to fund companies which are seeking to improve their social or their environmental performance. What if governments now provided tax incentives for these flows to increase? If the interest paid on sustainability-linked bonds was tax-free in some countries, or in most countries, eventually, hopefully, in all countries, that would be one mechanism for driving money through the bond market, which is $100 trillion, to guide companies through a financial incentive to shifting their behavior. But the major one is changing the behavior of every company away from seeking profit alone. And there, Frédéric, the answer has to be transparency. You know, we didn't always have transparency on profit. In the 30s, it was introduced first in the United States, then across the world, a single set of accounting principles for every company. Now we have to do the same thing for impact. And so I firmly believe that we have to build on the ISSB's creation now and create a path to valuing impacts, so that when any of us on this panel look at a company, we can tell that it is creating profit of so much, social impact of so much, and environmental impact of so much. And then governments can provide incentives for these companies. They can tax the companies that are doing harm, provide incentives to the ones which are solving social challenges. And if you think in terms of Lise Pierrette's comments, if what we need is to incentivize the flow of microfinance to small local businesses, then we need to provide tax incentives for that too. And we could do that in a similar way. So I think the next step, Frédéric, is to begin to value impacts and to incentivize their delivery.
Thank you, Ronnie. Roberto, I think you wanted to also maybe elaborate on this topic and also tell us maybe about we've been talking about the importance of channeling finance where it should go. Isn't there also an issue around information, how information should also be more distributed in a way or accessible for everyone to actually be able to compete at the same level?
Roberto is
I don't know if we can hear you. Yes, we can't hear you, Roberto, apparently.
I think he's
Okay, sorry.
Ah, okay.
Sorry. So I think that Sir Cohen point is the key one. So is behind the SDGs, behind the Pact for Impact, is the revolution that all the private sector is mainstreaming sustainability and impact. So I totally agree about impact transparency. This can be the revolution. So the whole issue related to the ESG and the impact-weighted accounts are really key. I would like to add two things in this respect. One is to have the best lens as possible in order to really value the impact, particularly the social impact. And I mentioned here the development of a due diligence approach that is currently undergoing in the European Union, hopefully to have a new directive on this and then having the member states. So how the business operation really of each business affect the whole value chain and not to consider just the business as the single entity system. So that is the great challenge. As Oxfam, we think that this is strategic to work with market leaders that are willing to move faster on this due diligence approach and to really enhance what we call a race to the top. So really looking at what is my impact in the whole value chain and what is my impact in the various countries and how I can improve consistently on this. And then the second issue, as you mentioned, is to reduce the asymmetry of information, particularly at the market level, at the consumers. All the data show us that consumers are really key to buy sustainable products. The problem is that there is still a lot of asymmetry of information with many brands. People don't know who is behind the brand. And therefore, of course, businesses have incentive in order to communicate better on sustainability, but we need to have also a systematic initiative in the information part in order to accelerate this process.
Thank you, Roberto. We have 8 minutes to go, so I would now like to turn to the Q&A. We have a few questions here. First question, what is the biggest challenge faced by those active on the ground? Who would like to answer this? Maybe Jeroo or Elise Pierrette. Jeroo, please.
Yeah, hi. I think the most challenge active is three things. A, it is having a seat at the table to be able to make policies change. And currently policies are not there accordingly. The second most active thing that we need is legal frameworks. We've just come out with a report on what legal frameworks need to change and how they need to change to facilitate social entrepreneurs on the ground. So we've also had a report on how governments could work with social entrepreneurs to make them have less challenges. But A, we need a seat at the table. B, we need to change the legal framework to make it possible. And C, we need to have the capital to bring about the change, not just capital with a return on investment, but also capital which is just development capital, because systems change sometimes needs grants. And impact funding won't solve everything, especially not for the last mile. So these are the three things: capital, legal, and access.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. We have another question around Catalyst 2030. What are the standards for joining Catalyst 2030? Would you like to quickly answer this, or shall we refer this person to the website?
Yeah, it's very simple. Everyone is welcome, so please join. We want to be as inclusive as possible, but there is a reference and a due diligence process to check out validity. But all welcome. Come on and join. The bigger the family, the better. Over to you, Frédéric.
Okay, I would like to get back to this, to the issue of the legal framework, and maybe turning back to Elise Pierrette. There have been some changes in a few countries in Africa. How do you see again how do you see Africa moving forward in implementing enabling legal environments or legal frameworks for the social and solidarity economy?
Oui, il faut dire que
we need better public policy to encourage the social and solidarity economy across the continent. This will enable us to modernize and systematize the practices that we have identified as part of this social and solidarity economy. But there are a lot of limits to such actions now because they often remain at a very basic level. It's difficult to promote and foster them. On the African level, in our network, we have an advocacy program with political leaders for the creation of laws and an institutional framework that would be favorable to the development of the social and solidarity economy, with regard in particular to the sustainability of this sector. And, of course, all of the principles and values, including transparency, must be maintained. This is true for French-speaking Africa, which are the countries I know best. And in Cameroon, we already have a few laws. Morocco is working on a new law in this regard, as Senegal as well, and Mali. So there are sectorial policies that have already been set up to encourage this economy. And this is a dynamic that we're trying to encourage in all African countries. And that is why we have also asked lawmakers, members of parliament, to join us in the creation of the new laws that encourage a social economy. We need financing. We need a participation of all stakeholders in the debate at all levels. And we need to have a real legal framework for this sector. So this is indeed one of the challenges that we face. And with a good legal framework, it can become a true economic alternative.
The end of this session. Ronnie, do you have a final word for us? And then Jeroo and Roberto, very quickly.
Yes, we're going to get pushback. Many people don't want to see this shift in our economies in the direction of impact. We have to join forces. We have to support France in its presidency of the EU. This is the time for breakthroughs.
Thank you. Thank you, Ronnie. Jeroo?
For me, it is how do we access this trillions of dollars which are going to be available in the social space and use it effectively so that it reaches the last mile and actually helps us achieve the SDGs.
Thank you, Jeroo. Roberto?
Yes, from my side is to keep in mind always the holistic approach and the ecosystem that needs to be enhanced. And so if we have encountered in one country some obstacle in the legal framework, but we have still many other areas that we need to work, and examples have been given in this floor. So there are parts of the system that can be push more faster, let's say, and we have to concentrate on this, keeping in mind the big picture always. And of course, the legal framework is a key one.
Thank you, Roberto. There were more questions, and especially around Pact for Impact. So I can only refer you to the website. You will learn a lot about this initiative as well, this French-led alliance. I would like to thank all of our speakers. Thank you very much indeed for being part of this event today. Very interesting. Thank you everyone in the audience for being with us. We wish you a very nice day, a nice weekend. And for those of you who can stay on for the rest of the day, there are many more interesting panels to come. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Yes.